meeting Thursday, December 21st, 2017. Roll call, please.
Stein.
Here.
Case.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Stonebarger.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Culhane.
Here.
Olson. Here. Dargis Johnson and Dolly are absent. We have a quorum.
Okay, and the first meeting on the agenda is the approval of the December 7th, 2017 minutes. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Hanson has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Case seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2, applicant Brittany Wilma. Go ahead, Jill.
Okay. Applicant is Brittany Loma. Her property address is 1805 9th Street Northeast. The applicant seeks approval to operate a daycare home business or a home occupation in a PUD planned unit development per 21-7001, contingent upon compliance with Chapter 2170, Home Occupations and Standards, and specific rules governing individual conditional uses, including but not limited to Section 210202, 2B6A through H. Staff finds that, first of all public notice requirements were met. Home occupations, including daycare homes, may be permitted by conditional use as accessory uses to a principal residential use within any residential district, including PUDs, and any property used as a residential dwelling within any zoning district, but only in conformance with the standards of Section 21-7002 of this ordinance. Applicant is currently utilizing her owner-occupied 2,346 square foot split-level single-family dwelling as a home daycare facility for 12 children. The property surpasses the minimum square footage of interior floor area and outdoor recreation space required for up to 12 children per City Ordinance 21-1403-1. Loma is currently state registered. The applicant submitted written request, site plan, and floor plans, which reflect compliance or non-compliance with the following ordinance requirements. Section 210202, 2B6A through H, specific rules governing individual conditional uses, includes the review of such things as ingress, egress, off-street parking and loading, screening, buffering, signage, exterior lighting, required yards and open space, and general compatibility with the area. Chapter 2170, Home Occupations and Standards. Luoma has acknowledged by signature her understanding and assurance to comply with these standards. Signage is not desired at this time. Any future signage must comply with Section 21-7002, number 8. Chapter 2163, Off-Street Parking and Loading Requirements and Engineering Design Standards. Per 21-1403-1, facilities shall supply adequate off-street parking or other suitable plan for the loading and unloading of children so as not to obstruct public streets or create other traffic or safety hazards. Luoma's property has an approximately 34-foot wide paved driving parking area, allowing for a maximum of 3 legal off-street parking spaces. The minimum number of legal off-sized parking spaces, hard-surfaced spaces required for just the single-family dwelling use is 2. This board may consider requiring additional compliant off-street parking spaces as a condition of secondary use approval and to comply with 21-1403-1 for the safe loading and unloading of children. Chapter 2165, outside storage and display requirements for specific uses. This is expected to be typical to the average single-family dwelling situation. And Chapter 2173, landscape and lighting standards. Minimum tree requirement. The minimum number of trees to be located on the development site shall be 1 tree per 50 foot of frontage. There is 1 deciduous tree existing in the front yard, but none on the boulevard proper. This board must determine if the request shows satisfactory provision and arrangement concerning Chapter 2170, Home Occupations and Standards, Section 210202, 6BA through H, and Chapters 2163, 2165, and 2173 as described. If endorsed, this board may consider imposing any conditions of approval deemed necessary for this secondary use, for example, additional off-street parking spaces, fulfillment of boulevard trees, etc.
Have there been any response from any of the neighbors?
Yes, there have been. We received 2 phone calls from neighbors. One is the adjacent landowner at 1806 9th Street Northeast, and they say things are fine now. There were some parking issues in the past, and it seems that they were straightened out, but they do not want to see this business getting bigger. And then another adjacent landowner at 1811 9th Street Northeast says now is fine, but they are opposed to employees or more children. And by the way, the police department says that there are no issues with this parcel.
Currently, she's got 12? Is that what your letter said?
I believe the letter says I currently care for 12 children
And
ranging in age from 4 to
That's the
5.
maximum allowable anyway, right?
By state, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
before we move any further, I need to state that I had an ex parte contact with Mr. Robbie Mueller. He called my home on Tuesday. It was about a 2-minute conversation. He had said that he was an adjoining property owner and that he objected to an expansion but was fine with the current proposal as it was before him. I instructed him that he needed to come to this meeting and say that for himself, but I should also say that the 2-minute conversation does not prejudice me one way or the other moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Jill, could you explain, you made a couple references to the calls you got, they referred to before what? What?
The what, excuse me?
Right, there were parking issues before, or there were
Oh.
something before?
Yeah, they didn't go into detail. One of these phone calls was taken by Ken and the other by me. And both of the neighbors seem to be saying that everything's fine now, so whatever parking issues there were in the past have been resolved apparently. So I didn't get any details on that.
Okay, with that, I'll open the public hearing. If there's anybody to speak for or against, please come up and state your name. Is it Brittany here?
Hi, I'm Brittany Loma.
Hi, Brittany. You're currently licensed by the state,
Yes,
and you have 12 children,
yes,
and that's the maximum, so there's no
right.
expansion going to happen in the future or anything like that.
Not currently, no.
You moved to this address?
Yes.
How long ago?
About 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. And so you were licensed at your old place, but you,
Right.
all right, just catching up with the regulations?
Yes.
In your site plan, you've got your main floor and the lower floor. Where do you tend for the children at?
In the lower.
In the lower area?
Yes.
So it's not all throughout the house, it's all in the lower area. And there are egress windows down there?
Yes, there are.
And has the state looked at your new house?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have any problems with it?
Mm-mm. Nope, they don't.
Just for my education, what does it take to be licensed with the state of South Dakota for daycare?
They have a state licensing person come out and they will, they check my smoke alarms, they check my windows, they measure my windows to make sure they're the right measurements. They check my outdoor toys, they check stairs, like if I have a banister, they'll check the width of, the spindles. They've checked, pets. I have to have all my pets have to have updated shot records. They check all the kids' immunization records. I'm required to take 6+ hours of classes, plus CPR certification. That all has to be up to date. If I have any helpers, they have to be up to date on everything. There's lots more. I couldn't, it's just a huge long checklist
Okay.
they go through.
Thank you. We've always referenced licensed by the state, but we've never referenced what people have to go through to be licensed by the state.
It's a lot.
The state also regulates the number of children by age that you can
Yes,
watch.
I can have 12. Of that 12, I can have 4 under the age of 2. Of that 4, I can have 2 under the age of 1. So I could have 2 under 1 and then 2 1-year-olds, or you can have a mixture. But I have to stay within those guidelines, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
who watches your children when you're away? For instance, you're at this meeting right now.
Right now, it's my husband. Last time when I came to this meeting, I closed early, so all parents were required to pick up early. Usually, I don't get days off. When I do, I'm closed, and parents just have to find alternative care.
so there was a reference to a parking issue in the past?
There was, when my husband would come home, and if there was somebody parked in, the spot to get into his parking spot in the garage, he would park across the street until the parent would leave so he could pull into the garage. And we had a neighbor who asked us not to park in front of their house anymore. And so as we have complied, we've at least tried to comply.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody? Go
There
ahead.
was a question about boulevard trees. Jill, could you review that?
As usual, we look into things like sidewalk, boulevard requirements, with the grass, the trees. In this area, just for your notification, there are several boulevard trees. There has been question, in the last year or so about whether or not it has to be boulevard trees, or whether or not the phrase in the ordinance which says minimum tree requirement is the minimum number of trees to be located on the development site shall be 1 tree per 50 feet of frontage, whether that has to be on the boulevard or not. So it appears that Luomas have at least 1 front yard boulevard tree planted. But this is, just so you can see down the street, the Luomas are, I believe, is it this house or this one?
No.
This one. And these are the adjacent landowners' boulevard trees. And here's across the road their boulevard trees. And you can see it gets a little sporadic through there. But so if you want them, you can require them. If not,
Being relatively new to the board, what has been the past practice of previous boards regarding boulevard tree planting?
it's been sporadic. And commercial and residential have not run consistently either. So so that's why I provided this picture, is I thought maybe the neighborhood would give you a better idea of what to do, if anything.
Would you have any issues if the board was to require a tree planting in the boulevard? Okay.
We would have to wait till the ground thaw.
I'm a little confused. I thought they said that there was a tree on the private property, like behind where this boulevard tree would be. And my concern, if you force them to plant another tree, would be if the 2 trees start to compete, one's going to take over the other one.
Okay.
So I would do what you want, but if they already have a tree, so in other words, if you look at where that tree is located, the only place left on the boulevard is right in front of that tree. So it's kind of going to steal the view. Just to comment.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions of Brittany?
I would make a motion to approve.
Just a
I'm
second.
sorry.
Is there anybody else that would like to make a public comment, for or against? With that, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve as proposed.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Kays and a second by Mr. Culhane. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Any other old business or anything?
No, that will be all today.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Motion by Mr. Stein, we need a second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Olson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Okay, I'd like to open the Watertown Plan Commission meeting for Thursday, December 21st, 2017. Roll call, please.
Stein. Kays.
Here.
Stonebarger.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Colhane.
Here.
Olson. And Dolly is absent. We have a quorum.
Okay, first thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Any additions or corrections? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Miss Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kays. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, or the agenda is approved. Second is the approval of the minutes of the December 7th, 2017 meeting. Is there any additions or correction? Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve, Chair.
Motion by Mr. Colhane, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hanson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Number 3, ordinance amendment to Chapter 2154. Brandy?
Okay, so the background with this ordinance amendment is, or in some history, the Gateway Overlay District ordinance amendment proposal began when city staff was approached about the building materials for Travis Outfitters' new building being constructed within the boundaries of the zoning district. Travis Youthy is proposing his building utilize more metal than what is allowed in the Gateway Overlay District. City staff thought this should be thoroughly examined and reevaluated as to what the intent of the Gateway Overlay District is. With it being a major gateway of the city, higher standards were established prior to any development. In efforts to reduce costs, Travis is proposing sheet metal on multiple sides of his building, which the city is hesitant to allow. With this ordinance amendment proposal, metal will be allowed on rear yards and or 15% of any wall used as accent. While reviewing the ordinance, the allowable building materials list was also modified to include modern architectural materials. Changes were also made to the ordinance to allow the Plan Commission to make decisions for structures that do not comply with the allowable materials. The Mayor's Planning and Zoning Committee was also dissolved through this ordinance amendment to remove any bias that could impact the group's decision, as it is composed of city officials that directly report to the mayor. It is the intent to keep these decisions as transparent as possible if a structure cannot meet the Gateway Overlay District requirements. It is the purpose and intent of the Watertown City Council and Plan Commission to establish a district with certain design standards to property visible within the designated corridors at key entry points to the city. And that is the intent of the district. So, if you guys have looked over the amendments, that was an overview of it. So we're adding a few new building materials, and I have a presentation to show you to explain what those look like in case you're not familiar with their names. So we'll be adding, the green is what's being added. So we already had natural stone, and then we're adding manufactured stone, provided it replicates the appearance of natural stone, not concrete block. And then tile, masonry, stone, or clay. Architectural metal panels, which covers a wall. Transparent glass and spandrel glass. And then metal siding. Lap seam metal panels or sheet or corrugated panels is allowed as follows. On any wall facing a rear yard, on any wall facing a front or side yard if used as accent to include not more than 15% of said wall, or no variance may be granted to authorize more than 15% of any wall facing a front yard to utilize metal siding, which we've already found issues with that we should include front and side yards, so we're not getting variances for the percentage that we decide. So these are the architectural metal panels. And then this is a sheet metal that is not lap seam, which is what we want to avoid.
Would you show the architectural metal panels again? And that would be allowed on any face of the building at no percentage reduction.
Yep. And so this, you can see the screws are shown.
And this would be allowed on 15% on any.
Not even this type of sheet panel.
Not at all.
It would only be the lap seam. And this is another example of what we're trying to avoid. So then the lap seam metal panels, this is what's allowed on the rear yards or 15% of the front and side yards.
Okay.
And then, or the corrugated metal. And the 15% is considered accent. So then, since 15%, just to get an idea of where that number came from or what your perspective is, I have some images to show you that depict 10% to 30% of a building of one material and then what that looks like. So on this perspective, this would be the 15%. So that could be the lap seam metal or the corrugated metal. And then of the building as well, this is 20%. So there's not a whole lot of difference between those two numbers. It's just more of your preference and really how much.
Because currently it's not allowed at all. Unless,
Correct.
currently it's
Right,
not allowed at
yeah.
all.
Yep. And then this image is showing 25% if both of these areas were the same material. This would be 35% of this side yard. This would be 25%, and this would be 35% of the sidewall. So even with, I mean, it's your own opinion as well, but the 25%, you know, that takes up a good majority of the building. This is showing 23% of the shaded red area. And then of this building, which has a bunch of different faces on the side, that's 20%. So there's a lot of materials going on with this building where it breaks it up some, but that might not always be the case.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So the mayor's committee, or the Gateway Committee, came up with the 15% as a recommendation.
Nope, not that committee. It was just the committee that was created to discuss this amendment for the Gateway Overlay District.
Who made up that committee?
There was a mix of, we had an architect, and then city staff, and the mayor, and 2 councilmen.
Thank you.
And I was on it also.
And the chairman of the plan commission.
The other thing that, the other thing it says in here too, that if whatever number in this example it says 15%, that there is no variance from that metal requirement as well. So it's locked in. Even if somebody had a really great idea at 15%, there's no chance to ask for a variance.
Well,
But they
and
wanna go
that's where we have that in there about where it would go to plan commission, because if there's something that doesn't, if they can't meet the 15% and there's a good reason for changing the ordinance, that we should change it for everybody, that it won't be a case by case.
Thank you. It wouldn't be a variance, but it would be a reason that you would change the ordinance. Then it would apply to anybody after that.
Yep.
Okay.
I think one of the reasons why we wavered and allowed 15% is because Trav was pushing very hard for it. He wanted some kind of accent. This is the Gateway Overlay District. That's a lot more restrictive than any other district in town, because we wanted to put a good face on the buildings when people are coming into Highway 212 into town. We wanted to have a nice area. He wanted more than that. He wanted one entire side to be corrugated, and that was not allowed. We wavered and allowed 15%. I wouldn't like to see any more than that. I wouldn't like to see 15%, but that's what the committee decided, and that's fine. But that's where we came up with the figure.
Thank you. And also from a staff perspective, it's my understanding that when the Gateway District was created many, many years ago, the intent was to, as the chair had said, to make it a focal centerpiece for the community, basing it something on what you would see if you drove Louise from 26th to 41st Street in Sioux Falls. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it's the gateway to the city, and to have those standards in place before development was even started.
Any other questions about the amendment?
I guess I have a question about when you say front yard versus side yard, and can you show an aerial of that property when the streets are completed there, Randy?
Of where Trav's new building is going?
Correct.
Yep. It won't show the building as it's being constructed now, but in his situation, he has 3 fronts and 1 side yard, because he'll front 26th Street, 8th Avenue, and Highway 212. I'll get there here.
So he would be able to get 15% on all 4 sides of his building.
Yeah. Yep.
Or he would be limited to 15%.
Yeah. Yeah, he wouldn't have the rear yard where you can have sheet metal.
And so again, what's the designation between a rear yard and side yard?
If it's, well, if there's one front usually, and then there's the two sides, and then the rear. Because usually your structure is only fronting one street.
Correct.
But then, I guess the side yard's just on the side of the front, so that's where the rear, there is no rear to the property.
All right.
Sorry, that was probably a bad explanation. So there's Trav's property. So there will be 26th Street, 8th Ave, and then 212. Front, and side.
And then where will there be access or curb cuts off? I mean,
I think he has access onto 8th Ave or 26th as well. Shane, do you? Okay. But does he have access onto 8th Avenue as well? So onto 26th and 8th, about there.
So the property just to the east of that would have 2 front yards and 2 side yards? Is that
Correct.
okay?
Mhm. Yeah,
Just
all
to
of
do-
these properties, this one will be in the same situation as Trav.
Okay. Any further questions? Do you have a comment? Go ahead.
You're probably getting to it, but we do have a public hearing for this one too, for this ordinance amendment.
Okay.
Could you show the general area of the gateway where this would apply on the map?
Yep. Believe, I'll get something to show it. Where am I? Okay. I believe that's it. Shane, can you see what I have highlighted there?
Is that like from 19th Street east to, and bordered by Willow Creek Drive and 212?
Yep, and then over to 31st.
Yeah, I believe that's roughly
Pretty
it.
close.
Yep.
Okay.
On the north, it's that quarter section line. This is what's
Yeah.
bounding that.
Turn the zoning off so it's easier to see.
Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing. If there anybody here is to speak for or against this amendment, please come up and state your name.
Do I have to push the button?
You're on.
My name is Travis Youthy. I'm the owner of Trav's Outfitter.
My name is Mike Fairchild, and I'm the general manager of Trav's Outfitter.
Just kind of before we get started, I just would like to thank you for hearing us out today. I just want to read, we'd been to see the mayor a couple of times about this, and the last time she sent me a nice email after we had met. I just would like to read it to the board so that, hello Travis, this is dated Friday, October 13th. Thank you for your presentation of your proposed building siting plan to the Mayor's Planning and Zoning Committee this morning. After a thorough discussion, the committee voted no to your requested variance. I know that you will be disappointed to hear this, and I want to let you know that the committee unanimously admired the overall look of your building, but also felt that this is more than a minor modification to the overlay district standards. In accordance with section 21.0502(4) of the zoning ordinance, you may appeal the committee's variance denial to the Board of Adjustment if you wish. If you decide to appeal, you may want to consider breaking up the east side by carrying the stone bottom border across, adding stone pillars or something similar in order to improve your chances for approval. doing so may have made a difference in the outcome of the vote today. This would also apply to a lesser degree to the west side. Best regards, Sarah Karen Mayer. So the reason I wanted to put that out there is that we went back after getting this email from the mayor. I went and met with Hometown Building Center, who's helping us out with our finishes. And we've got some pictures. I don't know whether you want to see them or not, but what we did was we took the mayor's email to heart. So we can talk about I guess Mike's right there, so I guess he can maybe be the pointer for us. But on the east side, the proposal was for that side, because just like it was stated, we have 3 front yards and 1 side yard. So we felt that was the only yard that maybe we could, could have more steel on. But we took what the mayor had to say to heart, and we're proposing 3 foot of stone all the way across the bottom of that wall there. So and then 16 feet of LP siding coming from each side. You'll be able to see if he points to the west one there, you can see we've proposed some LP siding there to also break that up as well as 3 foot of stone across the bottom of that. The reason that I'm sharing some of that stuff with you is because even with that proposal, we're still far above the 15%. We can add some more LP siding to get down to 25%, but to get to 15%, we can't get there. And then the other concern that I have a little bit is the front of our building, which we've had that out in the public a lot, and we've yet to get a negative review on that. The front of our building actually has 23.88% of galvalume steel on the front of it. So I guess that's why we're here. I didn't, in reading the ordinance, I spent a lot of time reading this. I didn't understand or didn't realize that lap steel is a non-exposed fastener steel is what the proposal is now. And I just want to make really clear to the group here that we've never proposed a sort of multi-leveled steel, what I would consider more ag siding. We've never proposed that. We've proposed a material that's similar to that, and it is put on with exposed fastener screws, but it is more of a continuous rib. It's not more that sort of high-low like you would see on ag steel. A couple of different things, and it was stated in there. And yes, I mean I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys differently. There is some cost savings that we're trying to appreciate by using steel on the outside of our building, but we're mixing it up with LP siding. We're mixing it up with stone. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create an exterior of our building that is warm and welcoming, and that our consumer, that resonates with our consumer. Our customer is an outdoor enthusiast. They're a working person. It's the ag customer. And so when we put this design, the exterior finishing design together, we tried to do that in a fashion that would be something that would resonate with the consumer as they came to our store. Do you want to go there, Mike? Am I going too much here? But
As we've talked, so what we had asked is we'd originally asked for more. We'd asked for around 40%. We have come to the decision that we can really live with 25%. And yes, there's some cost savings, but going to 25%, the cost savings are minimal on this project now. Very small. What we're trying to do is keep the aesthetic look for our consumer. We know our customer. Every business that will come into the Gateway District will know their customer. We're trying to create a destination place for Watertown, South Dakota. The comments we've had in the marketplace and around, we're going to draw people from hundreds of miles. We're not putting up a shabby pole barn or a machine shop, which, talking to the developers of this property, I'm not sure if it was 10 or 12 years ago where this rule was put in. The idea was no machine shops, no pole barns. Or if you look at our current building, Trav's Outfitter, which we love and has treated us really well, you don't want that out there in the Gateway District. We don't either. We didn't try to duplicate it at 7 times the size. It would have been easier and that would have been really cheap, but that's not what we're trying to go for. So what we're asking for is the ordinance right now sits at 0. We had the ability to go through the mayor's council and the board of adjustment. That was rejected twice through the mayor's council. We're willing to come 75% of the way. We'd like to see the city with this ordinance come 25. We're not even asking for halfway. Don't even have to meet us in the middle. We're willing to come more than our fair share.
Mike, so you said 23.88 is going to face 212. What were the percentages on the other 3 sides?
The other ones are quite a bit higher. The back east or the east side was at 46, the north side was at 32, and the west side was at 37. And so we'd have significant changes to make to bring that down to 25%.
Like I said before, when we went through this working group and we're looking at all the changes to this ordinance, it was at 0 before, and we, in my opinion, made a major concession to get it up to 15%. And personally, I would be not in favor of increasing it any higher than that.
As we've talked over and over, there are lots of opinions on this. We can take one person's opinion, Chairman Stonebarger's. We can take this whole committee's.
I do have to speak as a consensus of the group. It's not just my personal opinion.
No, and I understand that. Or it can be this whole group.
No, I mean the group that studied this proposal to begin with.
Yep.
All right.
Or we can look at the community of whole, the 5,500 people that respond and watch our Facebook page, our customers that see this every day. Those are the constituents that we serve and you serve every day. Design changes every year. They're building full $500,000 and $750,000 million homes in the Black Hills out of steel now. 2 years, that may be out. I mean, it's all an opinion. That's why we're just asking for a fair shot at this.
Well, it's the commission's job to approve a recommendation to send to the city council. And the city council has the ability to make adjustments to whatever we send to them. And if you do not like the result that you get here, you still have another shot at the city council. I'm just
Question for you, does this committee have the ability to change this from 15 to 25 and present to the city council?
Yes, it does.
If we want to, yes.
Brandy, of the other properties in that development, is everyone else?
There's Home Depot's only on other property.
The ones on 19, the Fiechner property, that's in the Gateway, isn't it? The Fiechner property?
Yep, it would be within the Gateway Overlay District.
And that property was built according to the standards as they exist today.
At the time.
Yep.
And that's 0%.
Right.
And just so I'm keeping up with everybody, okay, so the original ordinance read 0%. The Mayor's Commission came up with 15%. And Travs is here today to request 25%. Am I tracking this all here? Okay.
Yep, because we want something in ordinance where that's how it will be for everybody. That if this is okay, we don't have to keep doing variances or coming back and, just trying to establish something that that it's comfortable for that Gateway Overlay District. And it's there's a lot of commercial property within city limits as well that this one has higher standards. It has an overlay district.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned that going from 40%, a lot of percentages here, going from the 40% down to the 25% wasn't going to save you that much money. So then likewise, going from 40% to the current 15% probably wouldn't cost that much more money either, right? Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, you're right that it wouldn't. But, you know, the front of our building, we're going to have to adjust that to get down to 15% then. I mean, and you know, the mayor stated it in her letter to me. Staff, you know, we have never gotten any resistance to the front of our building. The resistance has always been to the east, the north, and the west in what our proposals have been. And each time that we met with the mayor's council, we went back and reworked it to try to get the percentages more in line, to get the percentages to things that would be more, that the city would have more of an appetite for. So we continue to work that direction. But, you know, the challenge that we have, that back wall is 225 feet long. And so what we've got to do is we've got to come up with something in that dark brown area. That's the bottom right photo there. We've got to come up with something in that area there that can run vertically rather than horizontally. Otherwise, you're going to have one solid 225-foot long wall with 6-inch LP siding on it, and we don't believe that that's good looking either. I mean, the wood lap siding fits within the ordinance, but you know, I think the one thing that's kind of lost here, and maybe it doesn't matter to the group. You know, we're trying to build a building that we're definitely going to be proud of, but we hope that the city will be proud of it as well. And so there are reasons that, you know, we're just a couple of shoe salesmen guys, but there are reasons that we work with folks at Hometown or wherever it might be so that we get a nice mixture of materials so that it is aesthetically pleasing to look at it. So, I mean, there's some of that 6-inch siding. We've been to LP 4 times trying to get them to approve it, to run it vertically. They won't approve it vertically because it won't hold up to the weather. So, I mean, some of those are challenges that we've been up against as well.
And if I understand what you said a minute ago as well, cost always a consideration, but your opinion, your feeling is that for your clientele, for the look you're trying to achieve, that the 25% metal is actually, it's kind of a two-pronged thing. You're looking at it, you know, definitely not minimizing that there's some cost savings, but also from the look that you're trying to achieve for the clientele you're trying to attract.
Yes, that would be accurate.
Just to mention too, with it being 250 feet, we also added in this ordinance amendment to it says the exterior of the building shall have varied and interesting detailing. Large unadored walls shall be prohibited 50 foot or more. All large walls facing Highway 212 and any public street must be relieved by architectural detailing, such as change in materials, change in color, offsets, or other significant visual relief, provided in a manner or at intervals in keeping with the size, mass, and scale of the wall and its view from the public right-of-ways. A distinct change in color or pattern may be considered a change. So even if they change it to like the LP siding, it would have to be broken up after 50 feet.
And 200? You said you had 200.
It's 225 feet long.
So when this ordinance was written, it listed several building materials. I mean, we had face brick, natural stone, tile, precast concrete panels, stucco, architectural metal panels, transparent glass, wood, decorative block, and the only thing you can come up with is metal siding. I mean, there are other options here. It's not like we're being, you know, restrictive.
Yeah, you know, with all due respect, metal architectural panels are only proposed right now, and the glass is only proposed right now. That's not in the current ordinance for the Gateway Overlay District. So the other thing is could we use drive it, which is commonly used? Yes, we could use that, but there again, we don't believe that. We believe that's great on hotels, but we don't believe that it's warm and inviting. It doesn't have the exterior appeal that we're looking for. You know, so yeah, there are other materials. I will be honest with you, Mr. Stonebarger. You know, when the developers come to town and build Hobby Lobby, and I'm not trying to kick those folks down the road, but when they precast the concrete panels on site and slather them with paint and fold them up, I know that that's approved under the current Gateway Overlay District ordinance, sir. But, and here again, this is just my opinion, just one person's opinion. But I have to tell you, sir, I don't believe that their building is as good looking as what we're offering right here, or what we're trying to build. So I'm not trying to be argumentative at all. I'm just saying that often the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and each person is entitled to their own opinion, and I respect those opinions. But I just don't think there's any way that anybody could convince me that Hobby Lobby as a building, although it met all of your requirements, is as aesthetically pleasing as what we're building for the city of Watertown.
Travis, you bought property in the Gateway Overlay District, knowing what the rules and regulations were for the Gateway Overlay District. And as soon as you start building, you want to change the ordinance, or you want a variance in the ordinance. We don't write ordinances to want to have to grant variances. We're trying to make an ordinance that everyone in the Gateway Overlay District will deal with in the future. And that's why the committee came up and says we will grant 15%, basically to throw a bone to you because you wanted to have some rustic appeal to your building. And I can't see 25 or 30 or 40 or any more, personally, but that's up to this committee to decide.
Just to clarify, the renderings that we're looking at today, what is the percentage again?
Well, the renderings are a bit inaccurate now, but I'll give you the percentages with the changes that we're. The front would be 23.88%.
That's the top right.
The top
Base
right.
is 212.
And what is it as shown?
That's exactly as shown.
Okay.
Yep. The bottom right is, which is the north, is 32.22% as shown. The top left, which is the east one, which is as close as we have to a side yard, is at 46.61%, but that is inaccurately shown because it's shown as not 100%, because what I did when I measured these, and I don't know, I'm just doing it the best that I can, but when you look at it from that angle, there's that lighter gold color is LP siding, and so that brown is what was proposed as metal. And, we've already said we're going to put 3 foot, we've proposed 3 foot of stone, 16 foot of LP on each side, and we can extend that LP to get down to the 25%. So that one is shown inaccurately. The bottom left, which is the west side, is at 37.54%. And on the ends there, you can see it. It's hard to see probably from your guys' angle, but there's some brown on the dark brown area. There's 16 feet there. And, there again, we can make that LP longer so that we can get to 25%. But
Trav, I'm sorry. Can you so the east side is shown at what percent and will change to?
The east side, I don't know what it is currently shown at, but with our proposed changes, the east side would be 46%.
So, Jason, you can't see it, but the proposed change is 16 feet of lap siding here to there and 3 feet of stone. That would make this middle section at 46.6%.
Well, and then you've got galvalume on there, so that's how you get to that.
So, yeah, and some of this galvalume that's included
Yeah.
here on this side.
And what's that sidewall height? I mean, not necessarily the peak, but
yeah,
the
16 foot.
Sidewall, 16.
The sidewall is 16 feet on the east side.
So even if you got to 25%, there'd still be more changes required than to
Correct.
the way it's sitting right now.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like, I don't know how much money you have invested in this project, but it sure seems like you're trying to do the right thing, at least with the intent as far as trying to put up a good-looking building and something that's appealing in the Gateway District, which is my understanding of the rules and regulations in the first place, to make sure that as people, as the entrance to Watertown on the east side is attractive, appealing, and sends the kind of message that we want to for the community for now and in the future. And it doesn't sound to me like at 25% that's blowing that all up, like is turning the Gateway District into a trailer park, to use the expression. In my opinion, I think 25% is reasonable.
Any other comments for Travis? Is anybody here to speak for or against? Would you please come up and state your name?
Diana Ford. I have been listening with interest, and the focus, according to the agenda, is ordinance revision, but the discussion has all been centered on one property in the Gateway District. I agreed with many things Mr. Stonebarger said about you bought property, you knew what the rules were, and I would just, as a person who doesn't have a vested interest except as a citizen of Watertown since the day I was born, I really would like the board to hopefully set aside the wonderfully emotional argument that Trav has made and remember how the Gateway area was put together and the purpose for which it was formed and the reason so many years ago those rules and stipulations were put into place. It was a big picture, and right now this presentation has been a really small focus in that whole Gateway area. So I just encourage you to remember, as I'm sure you will, that this is a big picture question, not a little tiny one business question. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else to speak for or against?
Has staff received comments from other property owners or developers of land within the Gateway District regarding this matter?
No, I don't think so. I haven't. Shane hasn't.
With that, I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion. I would like to point out that 215414 2K. Wait a minute, I'm on the wrong page. Where was the side yard?
So 215414, and it'll actually be 1 J3. So to add,
Side yard, front and side yard
yep,
for no variance?
yep, and that is consistent with subsection 2. That was a good catch.
Here, this says front or side yard, but they left off side yard. So is that,
Does that need to be
Clear?
a formal amendment, Mr. Chair,
yes.
on that one?
Well, we can add that into the motion to make that change, and then going forward to council, we'll add that. So if
Is-
you, however you want to make the motion, but then just say to make that change to 215414 1.
As long as we have the concurrence of
I'll make a motion to add side yard to number 3 under letter J under number 2 of 215414. So we have that taken care of, and then we can adjust the other things.
And then it's actually for 1, but on the illustration it still looks like 2 because it didn't change the number.
My motion is to accept the language as proposed by staff regarding side yards and metal siding.
Okay, for clarification, this will be modified and brought to the council as modified for first reading.
Only
So
if the
it
plan-
will have the correct language in first reading.
But the
at
planning
council.
commission has to make that recommendation.
Correct, correct. I'm just making clarification that it will already be changed before it's seen again.
Right, but as presented and as advertised
To
in the
us.
paper, we
Right.
have to make the motion to amend it as it is, because that wasn't part of the
Yeah.
public notice.
So,
Yep,
Mr.
correct.
Roby, could you do we have to make an amendment to this piece of paper and approve that amendment before we approve this piece of paper? Or can we do it all in one motion? What is the cleanest way of doing that?
I think there have to be two separate actions.
Okay.
Amend the motion, pass the amendment, and then pass the entire motion.
Thank you. So, Mr. Keys?
My motion would be what staff has provided as far as adding the word side yard to that section of the ordinance.
Yep, so that will be to 215414 1J subsection 3.
Yes.
We have a motion by Mr. Kays. Do we have a second?
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? So, in this motion, what about all the percentages?
We're not, no.
No,
this
no,
is-
no, no. We're not dealing with the entire, we're just dealing with one
That one clarification on the side yard thing?
clarification.
Second.
Second by Mr. Culhane. Is there any further discussion on adding side yard? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've added side yard. Now, we need a motion on the change to this ordinance. Would anyone like to try it?
Well, the motion would be to approve as amended if we're going to take it as this, as delivered.
Correct.
The question is there any, before that motion is made, is there any substitute motions, or is there something that we want to talk about that's different than what was given to us by staff and the recommendation? So is 15% the number? Is there, or is it a different number, or are we just going to go with as presented?
Another thing too that you guys might want to consider is the language of having the large unadorned walls shall be prohibited 50 foot or more. Are you comfortable with 50 feet? That was presented by an architect.
Well, according to that, if you change the paint scheme, you've met that,
Yep,
so,
yep. So that's also
yeah.
up to you guys.
Brandy, how does this compare to other overlay districts around the state as far as percentage? I mean, are we in step with other communities, or has any research been done on that?
We looked into other communities, and actually, they're all, I mean, they all are different, but overlay districts and trying to, I guess, limit which building materials can be used is normal, and I don't think that a lot of them included sheet siding. I know that Jason Kahn, he was part of the committee that researched this and met on it. There was in Santi, I don't know where that town is, but he had a couple different examples that he had looked at. So as far as metal though and the percentage on what they go with, I'm not sure.
Brandy, can you pull that PowerPoint presentation back up and just go through the percentage?
Yep.
Percentages again.
So this is where we're at right now. This one to me, it takes up a large majority of the building. It's 23%. But it just, I mean, it's always going to depend on how many different faces there are, what materials are being used, and how big the building is. On really how much it's how it's being used.
Not to complicate things, but did the committee in their review look at, they came up with a flat 15 for every side of the building. Did they look at granting some variance or allowing one side to have more than 15 or
No.
not? I just was curious.
No, that's why they put in this that no variances will be granted.
Okay, so the only place it can be is in a rear yard, but there, in some cases, there isn't gonna be a rear yard.
Brandy, could you show the types of steel again as well, please?
There's corrugated metal
And that would
and
not-
the lap
so
seam.
That's what he's, that's.
So the corrugated would be allowed or not, or,
That would be allowed for 15% as accent.
all right.
And then the lap seam would also be allowed. And this is what we're trying to avoid.
And what is this product? I mean, it still has a face fastener, but, or
It's not
exposed.
allowed.
This is not allowed?
No, that's not allowed.
This
And
isn't
that-
allowed at any percentage, even with the as amended.
Yeah.
This will not be allowed for any of the percentage, yeah.
And we're comfortable, staff-wise, that when we read what's said that it is allowed and it's not allowed, that we don't need a visual in the ordinance to understand that. I mean, you're okay with that? There's no judgment calls that you have to make on what is in and what's out when it comes to metal?
I suppose that could be good to have illustrations. Otherwise, to find out what this material is actually called and just exclude it instead of having because right now we have it as examples. The metal siding example, lap seam metal panels or sheet or corrugated panels is allowed as follows. So, I mean, that's an example of what it could be.
I'm just asking staff that they are comfortable with the rules as they're written so that we don't have to have some sort of legal proceeding to determine what is.
Mhm. It'd probably, I don't know what Ken's opinion is. Or if there's any way just to clarify it.
I would think that images always help one understand with some clarity, but the challenge is all the irregular faces and different set. I mean, every building's going to be different, so your interpretation of faces and percentages may be still left to measurements and so forth.
So we're comfortable with the language.
Any other discussion?
Pardon?
Any other discussion?
Yeah, anybody have an appetite to increase the percentage?
We need to make a motion.
Well,
Mm,
but if,
I'll make that motion. I'll make a motion to increase it to 25%.
thank you, I'll second that.
So we have a motion to approve this ordinance with 25% from, and a second. Is there any other further discussion?
The motion would be to amend
Oh,
this resolution.
okay. Is that your motion, Mr.
I
Cohen?
motion for a second amendment. I
Right,
believe, right, it's the second amendment.
right.
Or as it,
I'll second.
Okay, so a motion to amend the amendment as written, or this resolution as written. Any discussion? I'm not in favor of increasing, I can say that. I think 15% is more than generous. Originally, there was nothing in there,
Right.
so
help me again. I know it was that work session, but how did we settle on from 0 to 15, or how did that come?
Okay, originally, the sheet siding was not in the Gateway Overlay District ordinance at all. And Travis said we need to have some kind of architectural, he needs this, he needs this. And this is okay, if you want to have some emphasis, we can maybe go 15%. And then that's what the committee agreed to. Basically, now he's coming back and says, well, I got 40 and maybe I can get down to 25, but I mean, in my opinion, you got quite a consensus to get 15%, but that's up to you guys to what your appetite is.
Any idea when the original ordinance was put into place, like the last time that had been reviewed?
It was reviewed when Home Depot went in, because we had to make it. Hobby Lobby, excuse me. When Hobby Lobby came in.
When was that, 2015? 2016.
And do you remember what the revision was at that point? What did it pertain to?
There was colors. Hobby Lobby had corporate colors that they have to have, and the Gateway Overlay District says it would be earth tone. That's taken out this 255414 number 1 that's crossed out in red. That's coming out because we made that change for Hobby Lobby, because they could not have earth tone colors because they have orange in their company logo. Sarah, do you have a comment?
Sarah Karen. I think there was a change in 2016 to allow the committee that we're removing with this proposed change. So that was another change in 2016, in addition to the color thing.
Okay.
I'm just of the opinion that design changes so often and these things are constantly changing. And I think if businesses are willing to make the commitment to be innovative and fresh, that as a community we have to do what we need to do to make sure we accommodate to. And I think having the conversation is good, but I think it's also very important that we're workable and reasonable.
I'll briefly comment. I understand the desire to avoid the pole shed appearance and the appearance of sort of storage sheds and make it look nice. I think what we have before us is a design, not in this particular instance, but as an example of what we can do when we think creatively. And the difference between 15 and 25% seems minimal at best. And based on my recent travels around the country, I think that these are kind of neat design opportunities. And if someone, especially someone who's local, is willing to do this and invest this, I think that we should at least consider it.
Any other comments?
Trav, at any point, did you ever have a rendering that would have met the ordinance, I mean, with no steel?
No, we'd never done that. We'd had the Galvalume on the front of it from the very beginning. We'd actually looked at, they have steel, and for clarification purposes, this Galvalume metal that we're proposing doesn't even look like the material that was shown in the slides there. It's a 7/8 relief, so it's not an inexpensive, it's not like the stuff that's on the peddler's market. And originally we were going to use, there's a self-rusting steel was the idea that we had come up with. We actually had seen it in Denver, Colorado, in a couple of outdoor stores, and we really liked it. But as we put together the outside finishes, we settled on this Galvalume because we felt the building was getting too dark. And so we ended up on this Galvalume, and this is a pre-finished material that won't fade or degrade. It's coated so that it will stay shiny like that. So, we had never proposed the front to be any different than with the steel on it.
I would like to make a substitute motion. Going to complicate this on you. I'm going to make a substitute motion to no more than 20%. 25% might be okay on the one face of this building, but if you have a building that's larger than this, and we have larger tracts of land where you can have larger types of buildings, and if you have a 400-foot long building and I got a 25% steel on it, it might be more than what people are thinking about. 15% was decided on by the local review committee. 25 is what this applicant is, and I hate writing policy for a single application. I don't think it's fair to the community as a whole. The 25 that was offered by the two esteemed colleagues up here, I think it might be a little bit excessive, and so I will throw out a 20% as a compromise and to see where that floats. And in the end, if 20% is the number or 15% is the number, and the first building that gets built you don't like, you can always change it going forward. So given that, I'll make a motion to change the 25% offering to a 20% offering.
No, we already have a motion and a second for 25%.
I'm making a substitute motion. That's the proper procedure. My substitute will act on the if the motion dies for a lack of a second, then we're back to the original motion. Okay, I made that then. I'll accept that. There's no second.
Okay. So is there any further discussion? For clarification purposes, there's 6 members present. We need to have five affirmative.
It's a simple majority.
Is it 4 for?
4.
Okay.
How many members are there?
We're acting as the planning commission. There are no vote requirements other than a majority vote of the quorum.
So as long as we have 4 for this motion for the 25%. And then if it doesn't pass, Matt, you might have
Then
to.
we're back to as
Then we're
15%
back
as
to-
amended.
Okay.
Okay. So on the amendment to make it 25% versus 15%, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay. Roll call?
Stein,
Yes.
Case,
No.
Stonebarger,
No.
Hanson,
No.
Colhane,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion fails.
So
So now we're back to the original as stated
with the side yard amendment.
with the side yard amendment already approved. Is there any further discussion?
Can Todd bring up his amended motion again?
That's up to Todd.
You can bring it up.
I'd like to bring up an amended motion. I'd like to offer 20%.
I would second that.
Okay, there's an amended motion for 20%. Mr. Stein made the motion. Ms. Olson seconded it. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No? Nay? Roll call?
Stein,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Stonebarger,
No.
Hanson,
No.
Colhane,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Okay, 20% passes. Now, can we vote on the ordinance? Any further discussion on the ordinance before we ask for a motion? We have a motion to approve it with the side yard, 20%, and as written. Anybody like to make that motion?
Is it a move to previous question, or is it just make that motion?
It's
It's to approve this and recommend.
I move to approve with the 2 amendments,
as
the side yard amendment and the 20% amendment.
And recommend this, the rest of this to the city?
Yes.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. Colhane. Is there a second to his motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Stein? Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Brandy, do we have any new business?
Yep, I just have an announcement. So on the regular scheduled Plan Commission meeting on January 4th, following Board of Adjustment at 4:15, we're going to have a training session for Plan Commission, and then City Council is also invited. It'll be an educational session covering topics relating to meeting procedures and due process communication, and Luke Muller from First District will be putting on that. Just some continuing education.
So you're going to record that so people that are not in attendance can view it visually?
Yeah, well, and it will be televised, but for City Council, we're going to invite them as well.
Okay.
Extra credit for that?
I suppose. Well, maybe we can print certificates.
There you go.
Any other new business?
Nope,
Any old business?
nope,
Any executive session?
nope.
Mr. Stein, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Absolutely.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Colhane. All in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.